Welcome to Parchment Update, an interview series from the Parchment Community Library to bring your community closer to you. I'm Karen Woodworth, Library Ambassador. I'm joined today by Dr. Sarah Neumann, Superintendent of the Parchment School District. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Well, the Parchment School District has a bond issue proposal on the ballot for Tuesday, May 6th. Please
Yeah.
tell us about the projects the bonds would pay for.
Yeah, so the bond project is primarily essentials, necessary essentials, and so we are looking to keep our students safe, warm, and dry. We identified needs. We went through an extensive process, which I'll talk about in a minute, about to determine what the major needs of our district were, and so the what we identified and what our community showed that they would support are roofs, parking lots, improvements to obsolete and aging HVAC systems, and upgrades to our facilities to make them more accessible for people with disabilities, as well as making our buildings, especially our entryways, more secure for our staff and students.
Yeah, those sound like very, very necessary projects for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how do the bonds relate to the expiring sinking fund?
Yeah, great question. So, our sinking fund, the final collection for the sinking fund took place in December. And so we chose to not renew our sinking fund. And our first collection for the bond would happen this summer. So the two would not overlap. And the financial net increase for our taxpayers is just over a 1 mil increase with the sinking fund falling off.
Okay, yeah, that was another question I had about the financial impact on homeowners in the district, and I know that does vary based on what the individual home is worth.
Yeah, in a nutshell, the net impact would be about $51 per year for every $50,000 in taxable value. So, if you have a home that is $100,000 in taxable value, which would give it a market value approximately of $200,000, your annual increase would be about $102 annually. We do have a bond website, Parchment 2025bond.com. There's lots of information there that shows a tax impact table, a few tax calculators, and really the net change between 2024 and 2025 taxes and what that would look like for taxpayers if the bond does pass. So I would encourage people to check that out as well.
Yeah, that is a great resource. I know the district has done a lot to get information out about this. You've held an information session on March 19th. You're going to hold another one on April 23rd, which is after we're talking, but before this interview will be available online. So I'm wondering, what are some of the questions people have asked?
Yeah, the biggest questions are around the financial impact. And the other really is why now and why this? Why these projects? How has the district prioritized funding to support facilities? And so we really talk about four categories, four funding sources. So we have our general fund, which is how we support general maintenance and small scale projects. Our sinking fund, we have about half of that, the revenue from that left, and that supports maintenance technology and small to mid range improvements. We also have capital projects fund, which can support mid to large range improvements, and that's something that we can contribute to annually, really a savings account for specific capital projects. And then of course, we have bond funds, and those are really for large scale projects and improvements. And often those we use those for things that need to happen across multiple buildings or across the district. So we've really spent the last 2 years digging into our facilities needs and identified a very expansive list of needs that totaled well over $100 million. We engaged in a couple of facilities assessments, some energy assessments. We spoke with staff, parents, community members, and then we worked to prioritize those needs. We engaged a company to help us with a community survey that surveyed our community and said, okay, these are our most critical needs. Which ones would you support? And that helped us to identify and prioritize our needs. And then the other thing that we did after that process was to identify what are things that we could do with funds that are already available to us. So our general fund dollars, our sinking fund dollars, our capital fund dollars, and how could we most efficiently marry those two with the proposed work in the bond to make sure that we're getting our biggest bang for our buck. So that allowed us, by doing that, our survey indicated that our community would support a 2 mil increase. And we were able to identify projects off of that scope that we could do either immediately or over time, which is how we landed at the 1 mil increase, that net increase that we are proposing under our current proposal.
Okay. Well, I know we all appreciate the work that goes into that and the different funding sources from schools. I know they each have their own restraints, and I think you have some information about that on your website too. So let's make it a little more concrete for the students. If the bond proposal is approved, what will be the impact on students in the district?
The biggest impact on students will be the learning environment. We have, as I had mentioned earlier, we have really aging HVAC systems that are either obsolete or dysfunctional and that really need improvement. And so, from a climate control perspective, that environment, both heating and cooling, will be much more consistent and conducive to learning. The upgrades and the energy improvements will also be very cost savings for our district. So it's really a both and. We also, the other impact for students is really accessibility for persons with disabilities, making sure that folks have access, curb access, bathroom access across the district. And the other thing is just from a security standpoint, we really want to focus on having secure vestibules in each of our buildings. Sometimes have changed. And so we are really looking at the entryway design at each of our buildings and making sure that access is more controlled and that we have more control over who is coming in and out of our buildings.
Okay, well, that makes sense. So tell us again, where can people find more information and details about the bond proposal?
Yeah, great question. So we have there are lots of opinions out there, and we encourage people to come to us directly with questions so that we can make sure we're giving you the most accurate information. We would love to point people to our website, parchment2025bond.com. That houses a lot of information about the bond scope, the process for development. It talks about the tax impact, the millages that we have utilized in the past, a history there, some tax calculators, and then there's a really extensive list of frequently asked questions that we try to update anytime we get new questions so that information is there and available to people who are looking for it.
Okay, sounds good. Well, before we wrap up today, what else would you like us to know?
I guess I would just say that we love our community and we are committed to enhancing and growing our school district, which is such a major part of our community. And we recognize that nobody wants higher taxes, right? But school funding in Michigan is set up so that major capital improvements like those outlined in our bond scope are supported through local voter approved bond funds. Our general funds support day-to-day operations, but districts go to voters for major projects. And we're actively advocating to change the way that schools are funded. But right now, we are just asking that our community invest in our district to provide these necessary upgrades. And we really believe that that invests in our community as a whole.
All right. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today about the bond issue that's on the ballot on Tuesday, May 6th.